Everyone, please watch this and then welcome Damian Mason.
America's economic greatness started with America's agricultural greatness. Today, food is more abundant, safer, and available in greater variety than at any other time throughout human history.
Damian Mason is a mixture of farm boy, talk show host, agricultural economist, and businessman. Damian produces and hosts the Business of Agriculture podcast and the Do Business Better podcast. Damian speaks and writes about the two topics he knows best, business and agriculture. His latest published books are Do Business Better and Food Fear. Please welcome Damian Mason.
Thank you for the standing ovation. Welcome. God, you're a bad audience. My name's Damian Mason. By the time, bring this volume up a little bit. It doesn't sound like we're on. There it sounds like we're on. Remember, half of this crowd grew up on John Deere 4020s. They can't hear a damn thing. We're going to have a good time today. Tade and the good people of First Farmers Bank and Trust have been a client of mine multiple times. They always bring me in. They said, Damian, you're supposed to be the wrap-up for our big ag summit. You gotta give these people something to think about, talk about the business of agriculture, the future. I said, I can do that. That's what I do for a living. They said, you also need to be a little bit funny so these people can have some fun. And I said, why would they need that? I mean, here they are at Ross-Ade Stadium, lovely Purdue University on a beautiful day, and they only made you walk about 1.5 miles to get to this facility. Somebody needs to tell Tade and the boys over there at First Farmers Bank and Trust, farmers don't walk. Hell, they take a golf cart to the Farm Progress show. And I thought, why would they need somebody to put in a dose of fun? And then I sat through a couple of your sessions, especially that panel discussion. Jesus, do you need my services today? We're going to talk about the business of agriculture. We're going to talk about you in particular and how it impacts us, the people here in Indiana, as we relate to the business of agriculture. We're going to start at the beginning. The business of agriculture. And we hear this a lot because we are all in it. Almost everybody in this room was raised within agriculture. Raise your hand if you were not raised in and around the business of agriculture. 1, 2, 4, 6 out of a couple hundred. You see, most people don't join this business. They're born into it. That's starting to change. Right here at Purdue University, based on the newsletters I got, they tell me that for the first time ever, over half of the students in the School of Agriculture are not actually from the farm. That's changing because there's not large families, and there's not as many farms because of consolidation, right? But this business, by and large, is a great business, and very few of us are that familiar with it. You've heard the numbers because you go to these meetings, but I'm going to give you a little bit of perspective on some of those numbers. By the way, this guy, Joe, you just keep watching that thing spinning and spinning. It's never going to do anything else. It's just going to keep spinning. Yeah? All right, you got it. Well, I put a stop on it now because you were getting to where you're so, it's like a monkey watching a spinning top over here or something, Joe. Appreciate you being here. So here's the thing about the business of agriculture, because we're around it, we hear it all the time. You hear that 1% of our country farms. I'm going to give you some perspective on that. 1% of the U.S. population farms. According to the 2017 NASS, National Ag Statistics Service numbers, 1%, 3.4 million farmers out of 330 million people in our country. That's 1%. But to put that in perspective, 58% of that 1% do not sell $10,000 worth of product in a year. Did you just hear that? And to be a farm, there's 2,040,000 farms in the United States. To be a farm, according to the federal government, you have to be a place where $1,000 worth of agricultural product is produced in a year. $1,000 worth of product is nothing, right? It's a few bushels of soybeans, right? Doesn't mean anything. So the reality is, all those 2,040,000 farms, there's a lot of them that don't really do much. They don't really produce much. The reality, and you can remember this number if you will, 105,453. 105,453. Out of the 2,040,000 farms, 105,000 of them produce 75% of all agricultural revenue in the United States of America. So we're talking about a very, very, very small amount of people that actually produce stuff. Am I all for the people that have 3 acres of organic rhubarb and 3 hens? Sure, great. I don't like those factory farms, Damian. I just want to support my local organic rhubarb producer. Good, starve. So these are the realities of the business of agriculture that we're going to face. Agriculture, we should also appreciate, and we should make sure that we communicate this with our suburban friends, is the basis of all human advancement. We started this business 10,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago, we got tired of running around eating poisonous berries, wearing a loincloth, and said, there's got to be a better way. So humanity invented agriculture. And here's the thing, even during that 10,000 years of advancing agriculture, almost all the advances have come in the last 200 years. We never had surpluses until the last 100 years. So think about that. And 1% of the actual time that we've had agriculture, we've actually been at this level. That is amazing. It's an amazing accomplishment. All those predictions you heard growing up, I heard growing up, Soylent Green, we're all gonna be eating people, ain't happening. You know why? Because of us. So that's just some perspective on what this business does. We have a different set of criteria to manage now. It used to be, how can we actually produce something without the locusts eating it? And now, it's how can we manage these surpluses? And that's all within the last 100 years. There would be no Silicon Valley were there not a San Joaquin Valley. There would be no architecture without agriculture, because we make so much food, nobody has to worry about getting their sustenance. They can concentrate on creating Google instead of growing corn. So that's kind of some background on agriculture. I'm an agriculture guy. Some of you have been in my audiences before. I actually personally know several of you. But those of you that I don't know, that's my farm that I was raised on there in the top left corner. Your basic Midwestern dairy farm. We milked 50 or 60 cows, farmed 500 or 600 acres, most of it rented. Cement stave silo, a couple of grain bins. I built both of them, 60 cow freestall barn. That's how I was raised. Every county road in Huntington County had a farm just like ours when I was a kid growing up. When you hear all these things, like NPR, last month, people asked me to comment about it because I'm an ag comment guy. Did you hear about that poor 81-year-old woman in Wisconsin that had to start a GoFundMe account because she's still dairy farming like she did in 1960 and she just can't make it? Well, no crap. You know what? The phone booth manufacturer is out of business too. I'm not being mean, I'm being honest. Agriculture is a business. There's a reason we don't milk cows in our 8-stanchion facility anymore. It's antiquated, it's outdated. This is a business. I own the home farm now. My mom died in 2016. I bought out my siblings. Unless you ask them, I stole it. I actually live a couple miles from where I was raised on a 200-acre farm. I own about 280 acres, 40 or 60 of it, I guess, is woods, and I manage it. I rent it out, the tillable ground, to a large-scale dairy operator. You know, this is a business. It's an investment for me, but I do have dairy farm boy roots. I was very commenting about this Starbucks thing recently because, again, I tell people in the business of agriculture the truth. There's a reason why Starbucks piled on you, because you're bad fighters. I'll get to that in a minute. That's me in 1981 with my grand champion brown Swiss dairy cow at the Huntington County Fair. In 1981, she was the only brown Swiss cow at the Huntington County Fair. But as we like to say, if you can't beat them, find a more obscure breed. Speaking of breeds, I live half the year in Arizona. I live half the year at my farm in Huntington. I travel a great deal. I do about 120 days like this on the road. And let me just tell you something. This is a job. People don't get it. You know, I'm going to go ahead and tell you the truth about bankers. I was in Kansas City last year. I walked off the stage after doing this, and a banker says, hey, like, what do you do? Well, you just saw it. Well, like, but what's your job? I said, well, I give speeches all over the world. I write books. I do research. I try to keep expanding my little investment empire with farms. I buy properties and fix them. I said, wait a minute. You're a banker. Why am I justifying my work ethic to a guy that works from 10 a.m. to 2 every day? Forgot who I was working for today. The good people at First Farmers Bank and Trust like me. Actually, they tell me that it's okay to make jokes about them as long as I also pick on Farm Credit Services. They're our arch enemy, right? Farm Credit Services. I did a gig once. I walked off stage, a Birkenstock wearer. You know what I'm talking about, the turtleneck, the lack of hygiene. Go to Bloomington. They're all over the place. This Birkenstock wearer comes up to me and says, Mr. Mason, I heard you say you own a farm. No mortal ever owns the land. I said, good God, do you bank with Farm Credit too? See, pick on Farm Credit. I used to be a bank. I used to be a first Farm Credit customer. Funny story. I was a Farm Credit customer when I bought my first property. I was having a really big year, making a lot of money, so I decided I was going to pay off my note. Oh, boy. They pulled in the driveway with a regional manager from Indianapolis. Sat down at my kitchen table, gave me a hat, a beer koozie, pulled out the driveway. I owed him $500,000. If you bank with Farm Credit, you'll never own anything. That's a true story right there. I'm a farm guy. I travel around. This is what I do. When I get back to the farm in May, I usually have a batch of steers lined up. That's my all-natural Black Angus beef operation. I'm pretty big time. I do as many as 12 to 18 steers per year. Does anybody know what all-natural beef is? You're going to have to explain it to me, sir. I don't understand it. I just charge more for it. People from the suburbs will buy a half a beef off me. Damian, is your beef natural? Oh, yeah. Hell, they look natural to me. Till you kill them, then they look dead. Put them in the kill box at the butcher, and they flop around like this, and people say, is that natural? Yeah. It's got to be Black Angus, because the Certified Angus Beef Program has been in existence for over 30 years. And what did the Certified Angus Beef Program teach us? That you've got to have Black Angus. The people in the suburbs don't know the difference between a Charolais and Angus or Hereford, but golly, they know this. It's got to be a Black Angus, otherwise you might as well be eating your German Shepherd. Damian, are your steers Black Angus? Yeah. Look at them. The problem is I'm a very good salesman. I'm an average beef producer. Every year, I oversell my inventory. I get me a dozen steers, I sell 14. I can't help myself. So I go to my dairy farmer connections. Several customers get Black and White Angus. So I'm a farm guy, I'm a farm owner. I actually have roots right here at Purdue University. I went to school here and graduated with a degree in agricultural economics. I've worked in this room before. I don't get back here often. I thought it was funny, since we're Purdue people and we're kind of talking and recognizing this neat facility. This picture I just took last night. It's right there outside of my hotel room. You know, Tate and the guys put me up at the Ritz. I'm sorry, the Hampton. And I thought this is funny. This pretty well sums up being a Purdue alumni and a Purdue fan. If your football team goes on average 4-8, what are you going to get behind? Obviously the drum and the astronaut, right? This to me was, they thought it was a neat picture. They put it in the hotel and I thought, yeah, it really is, because it sums up being a Purdue fan. Hey, what are you excited about? That 4-8 football team? No, but by God, we have an astronaut that can ride the biggest drum in the world. Let me tell you something. When I badmouth Purdue's football program, because I love football, I tell everybody, I stayed here an extra semester just for the football season. I say, you know, Purdue's pathetic. They embarrass me. And people say, yeah, but they were good once. And I said, when? Well, you remember back when they went to the Rose Bowl? I said, that was 20 years ago. And they went 8-4 that year. Let me just tell you something. When LSU goes 8-4, they fire the English department. So you're saying, Damian, how'd you get in this line of work? Now, some of you know me. By the way, this little approach right here, Mark, if you ever get into public speaking, walking out into the crowd and trying to bring them in a little bit. You know, I don't want to sit up front. I'm going to get too involved. You know what? I'm not going to pick on you. But those people back there that are standing and talking while I'm up here, they're screwed. Mostly bank employees, you know what I'm saying? Guess who's going to get a promotion next year? Not any of those guys right there. So anyway, the way this all worked, in 1993, I was selling lighting fixtures in California. That's what you do with a degree from Purdue in agricultural economics. Selling lighting fixtures. I won a Halloween costume contest dressed up as Bill Clinton, so I quit my job in 1994 to become a professional Bill Clinton impersonator, political comedian. I was that guy right there. In fact, that's me in both pictures. The other picture I took last night. Went and got my supper over at Harry's Chocolate Shop, where I was a bartender for 8 months of my life when I was a student here. And if you still got my picture up there from my showbiz days as Bill Clinton, it's autographed to the chocolate shop, and it's right above a picture that's an ad from a magazine saying that more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette, which I think is really funny. So yes, speaking of Bill Clinton and smoking, as you might have noticed, I've always been able to imitate people, and I also have the same voice as Bill Clinton through years of not inhaling. Get some young people up front here. That's funny because Bill Clinton's the first president to admit he smoked marijuana. that he didn't inhale. And you got to ask, what the hell's the purpose? Then we elected George W. Bush. George W. Bush got on stage and said things like, going to miscontribulate. You're like, that guy's got to be stoned right now. So I've always been able to imitate people. That's how I got into political comedy. I looked a little bit like Bill Clinton with the mag and the fat patty. You can see the picture right there. I don't need to bore you. Like Bill Clinton in 1994, I also had a 25-year-old girlfriend. Kids, I'd tell you why that's funny, but it's a little bit PG-13, all right? So to be a political comedian, or to be a comedian where you turn it into a business, period, means that you're a professional observer. When you are beyond open mic nights, when you make comedy your business, you're really a professional observer. You see things that others maybe see or maybe do not see. You put your point of view, your perspective, and your punchline on it, and you deliver it back to the audience. I'm giving you my observations now about the business of food and agriculture because I am a trained comedian, because I learned to watch everything, to read everything, to see a variety of news sources, to watch people, to watch the marketplace, and that's what I'm giving you is my observations now from a former comedian with an agricultural economics degree from a farm boy background about the business of agriculture. This is what I do. I don't do Bill Clinton anymore. Me and thousands of women say that. We having a good time yet? There we go. All right, 3 people applauded. By God, that's cracking it right there. Here's the thing about the business of agriculture that we must understand. The business of agriculture is not about us, it's about them. We make mistakes. How many people in here are farmers? About half the crowd? 2/3? Okay, 3/4 of the crowd. People say all the things, they say stuff that's really wrong to you, because they say it to me also. Hey, you're really lucky, you're self-employed. Hey, Mr. Odell from North Montgomery, you are really fortunate, you are self-employed. Are you self-employed? No. You don't work for yourself, you work for them. All of us work for a customer. Every dollar you're gonna make the rest of your life is right now somebody else's dollar. That's just the nature of it. Think about that. Every dollar you're gonna come into for the rest of your life is right now someone else's. We all work for other people. Hey, Damon, you're lucky, you're self-employed. Self-employed? Well, keep paying myself? Eventually I'd run out of money, right? I'm not self-employed, I work for First Farmers Bank and Trust. Tomorrow I fly to Vegas, I'm gonna work for Nutrient Ag Solutions. Last week I was in Fargo. If I was self-employed, why in the hell would I go to Fargo in January? Ultimately, we all answer to customers. Those are our customers, and what we need to comprehend as a business of agriculture is we say the wrong stuff. You know what we need to do in agriculture? We just got to educate the consumer about why we do this. Well, the reality is the consumer's pretty fat and happy in the United States of America. They eat pretty well. They don't care why you pull needle teeth. They just know that the Humane Society of the United States says it's evil. Educating them is not probably, I mean, it's fine to do the outreach, but we're not going to take the person that's never grown 1 calorie of food and bring them up to our level. The best thing we need to do is comprehend that we work for them, that we are mutually dependent on one another. They can't live without us, we can't live without them. We get this wrong sometimes. If you ate today, thank a farmer. That is so self-congratulatory. You know what? I also am wearing shoes that were made in a third world country and were shipped over here. What about the person that shipped it? What about the person that put them together? I mean, let's just get off our high horse about thank a farmer, because there's a lot of people that work really, really hard. And also, it sounds off-putting to our consumers. It really does. There's a lot of people that we could thank for what we do. Let's instead say, we don't want to fight with you. We want to put out a product that you're happy with, and you can tell the story, and you can feed your family, and we can all get along. And by the way, our consumers have a ton of money. The United States of America, agriculture still thinks it's commodity mindset. How cheap can we make it? I used to go to these meetings. I got people here from my county that know me. I used to go to these meetings when I was a little boy. Dairy Herd Improvement Association, local implement dealer with a ham sandwich luncheon. And they'd have a speaker get up and say, the great thing about America, got the cheapest food in the world. And it's true, 6.4% of the average American's income is spent on food. Did you guys know that? That's the cheapest anywhere on earth. In Nigeria, over 50%. Pretty amazing, right? So while that's a good thing for our economic productivity, we in agriculture tout this to our own detriment. I would go to those meetings as a little boy because I'm a money-minded guy. I didn't want to be poor my whole life. And I would hear a speaker talk about the virtues of cheap food. And on the way home in the station wagon, my mother and father bitched about the milk check not being enough money that week. Don't you think one goes with the other? Our consumers can spend more, and they want to. We continually think in agriculture it's about cheap food, cheap food. We have 25% of the globe's economy. 1/4 of the Earth's GDP happens right here in the United States of America, with only 4.3% of the global population. They can spend more money, as is evidenced by plastic bottles of water. $21 billion of plastic bottles of water. The entire economy of Iceland is like half that size, and we spend that on something that is free. My old man is rolling in his grave right now, a dairy herdsman's kid. Bought the farm, the one that I own now, because he lost his arm as an 8-year-old boy. At age 21, got an insurance settlement, put it down on the farm. Masons didn't come from nothing. Now we have a farm. Milked cows our whole life. And he sees milk being outsold by bottles of water. And the man is rolling in his grave right now. You know why else? I bought a $50,000 Dodge pickup truck because it had a heating steering wheel. That's why he's probably rolling in his grave right now. 50 grand for a heated steering wheel and a Paul Harvey commercial. That's why I bought a Dodge. You would never buy a Dodge based on any other reason, right? So here's the thing about the business of agriculture. We're all fine. We're going to be fine. And you're saying, why are you telling me this? I'm at the First Farmers Bank and Trust Ag Summit, Damian. I'm telling you this because I want to give you the 30,000-foot vision. Remember, it's my job to fly around and to observe. And you don't go to ag meetings where you talk a lot about the consumer. And that's why I'm giving you some perspective on where things are going. Our consumers are bombarded with misinformation, stuff like this. I'm very active on social media. I don't always like it. In fact, I dislike it. But for my business, I have to be active on social media. And I see what is put out there. What we in the business of agriculture probably misinterpret. We think that all these groups that oppose us are based on principle. And they're really based on fundraising. The Environmental Working Group hates everybody in this room. The Environmental Working Group, a San Francisco founded, now San Fran and Washington, D.C. based activist group, founded by attorneys, makes a ton of money, all of which comes in not for profit, tax-free. So if they need to make some money because they've got 100 employees, are they going to actually go out and get real jobs? No. Put out stuff on social media that tells the consumer that potatoes at French fries at McDonald's are killing you. Put out social media that says that there's poison in your wheat. You see, that's what the whole argument is. It's not about them versus us. It's them using agriculture as a method of fundraising. Humane Society of the United States. Yeah, they care about animals, kind of, sort of. But less than 1% of their money goes to animal shelters. It goes for the 250 lawyers they have on staff to keep them all well employed. We in agriculture don't do a good job with our commodity groups of fighting this. When we get in trouble is we just don't know how to fight. I am the youngest of 9 children with 4 older brothers. I learned how to fight. I fight dirty. John Steinbeck once said, if you find yourself in a fair fight, you're an idiot. My nearest brother's 7 years older than me. People here know him. His name's Eric. I'd wait until he was sitting down and started to eat a sandwich. I'd come behind him and punch him in the back of the head. That's how you fight. And you got to be fast. But I tell you what, we in agriculture fight poorly. You know what we do against these? We should, if we want to fight well, all the commodity groups should say, hey, that's fine, you're right. We do use weed herbicide on our wheat. You're right. And guess what? The Environmental Working Group took in $80 million off of this little campaign right here last quarter. And you know what they did with it? Hired more lawyers to make it so that you don't have the food that you want. Why don't we expose them for what they really are? Instead, we always do the same thing in agriculture. We roll out a farmer in a plaid shirt. Jesus, do you people love plaid? Farm people have 2 outfits, plaid and free crap from the seed companies. Pretty much that's it. And then we put the farmer on a bale of hay with his lovely wife and his cute little kids, and we say, we work hard. We never win any battles doing that, but we do it all the time. But you guys think I'm kidding? I'd speak to farmer audiences. You think I'm not being honest about the plaid? I'm looking at you. I did a crowd last week that was so plaid, I thought the Scottish Army was advancing on me. Now, of course, this came up just last year. You guys are all familiar with the glyphosate thing, right? The glyphosate deal. 3 lawsuits so far, all of them out of San Francisco, all of them found in favor of the plaintiff against Bayer Monsanto. And the groups that pushed this, the groups that went crazy with this were, of course, trial lawyers, because there's blood in the water, circle like sharks, sue the big company, and fundraising activist groups. We should stop calling them cause organizations and call them what they really are, fundraising activists. Environmental working groups, Center for Science and the Public Interest, I can go on and on. They're the ones that push this narrative that there's weed killer in your beer. They don't use the word herbicide because that's too innocuous. Weed killer. And it was also in Lucky Charms. If you can get on a headline, weed killer and children's cereal all in one headline, you have just boosted your fundraising, right? That's what these organizations do. 9 days later, agriculture comes out with the truth. But it's already, the damage is done. Yes, there is some glyphosate in your beer. The cause groups named the brands by name because then they figured that puts pressure on the corporations to change their ingredients to organic inputs. Of course they want organic inputs. They're funded by the organic food lobby. So they named Coors Light, Miller Lite, Heineken, Sutter Hill Wine, Sam Adams. And the truth that agriculture came out with 2 weeks later was that, yeah, a 125-pound person would need to drink 300 bottles of wine per day for the rest of their life to have a toxicity level that would be a problem of glyphosate. Ladies and gentlemen, if anybody can drink that much wine, I'm guessing they're immune to Roundup. But the truth doesn't matter. The damage was done. Everybody asked me about this. Hey, Damian, you're a professional communicator. You're an agricultural guy. You're an advocate. By the way, stop using that word. It's not a word. Damian, how would you respond? You know how I'd respond? I'd take this and turn it into a positive. 33 states right now have legalized marijuana use, recreationally or medically. 33 states. But every employer has a requirement. You have to do a P test for drug testing, right? So here's what we do, agriculture. Hey, want to smoke weed and keep your job? After you get done smoking, grab you a Coors Light. It's got weed killer in it. Winning message right there. I believe that we're going to continually see a food fight. And again, I'm telling you this because these are big picture issues that affect agriculture. Ultimately, this affects the price of the crop that you sell. Ultimately, some of this does affect the demand for what you sell. And it certainly affects the perception of our industry. And that's why I'm telling you about this. Anybody know who that is? Mayor de Blasio of New York City. Mayor de Blasio of New York City last spring, in April, with a very complicit city council, passed legislation for Meatless Monday. The 1 million school children in the New York City public schools, most of whom are on free and reduced lunches, can't get meat in their breakfast or their lunch because he decided that it's bad for the environment to eat meat. And again, you're saying, I live in Converse, Indiana, Damian. I mean, it's a big deal for me to get to Lafayette. What do I care about New York? You care because, as we used to hear as kids, what starts on the coasts works its way inland. Food control used to mean the king would keep his people starving so they were under his thumb and under his control. That's not as easy to do now. So instead of food control by starving the masses, it's controlling what choice we can have. That's the problem with this. When politicians dictate food choice, it's bad for our industry, and it's bad for civil liberties, and it's bad for business. He's not the first. Mayor Bloomberg, the guy that's running for president right now, was the New York mayor before him in 2013. Anybody remember what he did? Soda tax. Yeah, so basically he decided that nobody should have more than 16 ounces of soda pop because it was making people fat. Again, a politician dictating how many ounces of a soft drink you can have. I don't like that. I've never lived in New York, but I don't like that because I like Coca-Cola. I didn't get soft drinks growing up. That's why I drink a few Cokes every day right now. I like Coca-Cola. When I was a kid, I only got soft drinks on special occasions. Anybody else relate to that? Special occasions, which meant somebody had the flu. Your mother got you 7-Up, right? Anybody else? Let me just tell you, any of you young women that are going to be mothers, 7-Up does not cure the flu. All it does is cure your children from ever wanting to drink 7-Up for the rest of their life. You see 7-Up, at least that's the way it is for me. I'm like a Pavlovian dog. I look down and see a 7-Up, I smell vomit. Are we having a good time yet? I knew we would. It's time to give something away for free. If you sit up front, you get something for free. Anthony, I'm going to give you something for free. You a good customer here, First Farmers Bank and Trust? I feel like I am. I think you are. I'm going to give you something. I'm going to give you a copy of my book called Brutal Truth. Thanks, Damian. There's 200, 300 different things I say that, I know and all that. Sitting right next to your lender, I can tell. Smart man, brown nose, got it. Gonna be a rough year, the statements don't look so good, and I know what it's like banking with a small town bank. I walked into my banker about 10 years ago and I said, hey, I need a little operating money. And she got my stuff out. She says, are your numbers pretty much the same as last year? I said, hell, I don't know, I made them up then. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. The new angle against the business of agriculture is climate change and environmentalism. This is a religious-like movement. My mother's place in the pew at St. Peter and Paul Catholic Parish is not going to be replaced. It's not me being mean, it's me being very honest about what the data says. A poll last year by CNN found that in the 1970s, 5% of Americans identified as no religion. Last year, it's about 23 to 25%. Organized religion is slowly going away. Not making a judgment, just telling you what the numbers say. But people still want their causes. And things like environmentalism and climate change replace religion. They become a very emotionally vested thing that these folks can feel like they've done some greater good. They march against Monsanto. They have parades against climate change. They do whatever they do. And they worship a 16-year-old girl that doesn't go to school as the new voice of science for the globe. Does that make any sense to you? She hasn't been in school since she was 14, and we're listening to her on a science grounds. Now, you can argue and tell me I'm a denier. I'm not getting into that. I'm just telling you this is the biggest challenge agriculture is going to have. Everything we do affects the environment. Animal agriculture, the whole greenhouse gas argument, methane, cow farts, conspicuous consumption. Americans are eating 220 pounds of meat per year right now. Did you guys know that? 220 pounds of meat and another 15 to 16 pounds of seafood or shellfish or whatever you want to call it, fish. So the argument is going to be we're harming the environment. Those big tractors, all that fuel, all that trucking, all that transportation, all that tillage. These are going to be the arguments used against us because we, more than any other industry, alter the environment, right? Up there with mining and oil drilling. So this is going to be our biggest challenge moving forward. I'll get into that a little bit more later on. You see, we got to realize in the business of agriculture, it's about feelings. People want to feel good. And so we in the industry still sell commodities, but the American consumer, the European consumer, the Australian consumer, wealthy consumers are buying feelings. Fair trade, non-GMO, Priuses. My buddy Dan right over here has the same degree as me, agricultural economics. Does anybody buy a Prius based on the economics, Dan? Of course not, because you'd have to drive it for 37 years to justify the gas savings on a Toyota Prius. People buy a Toyota Prius, you know why? Because of the feeling it emits. They put a coexist sticker on that thing and pull into work, and by golly, they've changed the world. Now, if they really thought driving was harmful to the environment, ride a bike, walk. Don't turn up your thermostat, right? Don't bathe. Many don't. But those things take sacrifice. Buying a Prius only requires that you spend more money. And so that's what we got to understand. The reason folks buy organic, it makes them feel good. My wealthy suburban neighbors in Paradise Valley, Arizona say it's not worth it. And they mean it's not worth it not to buy organic milk because it's only $2 more a gallon. It can prove that I care more, and it might be safer. Whereas the people in Huntington, my more blue-collar neighbors, they say it's not worth it. They mean it's not worth $2 more because I ain't got the $2. Two different customer bases. Understand that? It's feelings. Does anybody here drive a Prius? Okay, I pick on Priuses. I'm not going to pick on you if you raise your hand. I just want to tell you I have a policy. I have never let a Prius pass me. Never. Even if I'm on foot, they're not passing me. All right, I know we're having a good time. I told these people if you sit up front, you get something for free, and you really do. I want to make sure you understand that. Would you like a copy of my book, Brutal Truth? Okay, hold on a second. It's what we call re-gifting, Nathaniel. You guys all brought me here because you've heard from people from Purdue. You've heard people from the weather. By the way, I know Eric Snodgrass. He and I crossed paths. The weather guy, let me just tell you something. I'm not a trained meteorologist, but I'm just going to make some pretty big, bold predictions before I get into the economics part of it, and we'll tell you about the weather predictions. It's going to be wet this spring. And it's going to have some drying, and we're going to worry about whether it needs some rain, probably about late July, early August. And here's the one thing I can absolutely guarantee. The farmers in 2020 are going to bitch about the weather. Guarantee that one right there, huh? Because as these guys have heard before, and those of you who haven't been in my audiences, let me tell you about you farmers. You've got three favorite subjects, and they are in order: weather, how hard you work, and what time you wake up. Weather, work, wake up time. That's your farmer's WWW. You people are obsessed with it. You see that storm? Hey, what's it gonna do? Is it gonna snow? What's the temperatures like? You exhaust me with your weather talk. My brother, before he died, used to call me up. Hey, where are you this week? Oh, I'm in Sacramento. What's the weather doing there? Well, what difference could it make to you in Indiana what the weather's doing in Sacramento? You have it on your phone, your truck radio. You talk about it incessantly. You love the weather, and followed only by how much you work. Go to the diner where the farmers hang out. Hey, Tom, did you see that storm come through? Of course I did. I was up working. Farm people learn at an early age. You've got to tell the world every moment of every day how much and how hard you work. You're the only segment of the population that can sit in a diner eating pie for 11 hours, telling everybody how hard and how much you work. I'm going to tell these people, like my farmer buddies, driving around gossiping about the neighbors is not work, okay? When your trucks finally get auto steer, you won't even have to do that, right? And then, of course, there's wake-up time, the farmer favorite subject of all, wake-up time. Weather, work, wake-up time. You said you saw that storm, you're up working. What time do you get up, Bob? I'm up every day at 6. Next guy has to outdo that. So he says, oh, yeah, well, I can't sleep past 5:30. Next guy, it's 5, then it's 4:30. It's like an auction in reverse. Last guy to talk, he just stays up all night. I don't like getting up early. I got up at 9:50 a.m. I'm changing time zones. I came in from Arizona. You know what? I was working until about 10 last night before I went to Harry's and got me a beer and a cheeseburger. I'll tell you what, I don't like early mornings. If there's not a plane to catch, I'm not going to set the alarm. But my farm friends equate wake-up time with self-worth. Hey, Mr. Go around and talk for a living. Mr. Lay in bed until 8 o'clock. I'm up at 5 a.m. every day. I said, I sleep naked with firearms. Don't pull in my driveway. Something's gonna come out pointing at you, I swear to God. It's not gonna be, it ain't gonna be pretty for either one of us. When I look at the future, what do I see? When I look at the future, and by the way, if I give you data, every number that I've given you, I can back up with the sources. I don't mind if you disagree with my commentary. I don't mind if you disagree with my predictions. You're not gonna hurt my feelings. I used to be a Bill Clinton impersonator. But if I tell you a number or a data point, I can absolutely back that up. So just realize that I'm giving you real information on the facts, but on the opinions and commentary and the predictions, I don't mind if you disagree with a few of those things. When I look at the future, I see half the farmers 10 years from now. I already gave you some numbers: 2,040,000 farms, about 3.2 to 3.4 million farmers, depending on how you do the math and what you call a farmer versus decision maker. It's not going to be 2 million goes to 1 million. Because there will still be people that know it's advantageous to have a farm, to have 10 acres of organic rhubarb. And they write those things off. The truth is, that's one of the categories that's growing. According to the National Ag Statistics Service, in 2017, only 2 categories of farm operations were growing: the very small, niched specialties, and the very large. Where the half goes away is the 65-year-old operator that has 500 acres that they own and realizes nobody really is there to take it over, and the money's not that good. It's easier to rent it to the bigger operation down the road. We're going to lose the middle. It's going to be specialized and niche, and it's going to be very large on commodity. Now, this has been going on for a long time. I was born 50 years ago. We were at 3 million farms 50 years ago, so we've lost 50%. Peak farm happened in 1935. Like 6.5 to 8 million farms back in 1935. We've been losing farms for a long time. Don't despair, even though NPR will come out and do a story about that poor woman that still milks 27 cows and has a farm all 806, and she just can't quite make it. Don't despair. Less farmers has always meant more food. We've only got 1% of the population farming. In the country of Chad, in North Africa, one of the most poor and food insecure countries on earth, 82% of the population is involved in farming. Haiti, right down here in the Caribbean, 50% of the population involved in farming. More farmers always, almost always, equals less food. Less farmers in the world has always meant more food. European Union, Germany, France, Canada, you're all talking 1 to 3% of the population that farms. It's because the innovation has made it so that you can do more for the many with less. What's this mean for you? It means team up with First Farmers Bank and Trust. Have your will and all your legal issues in place. Decide who's gonna be your partner. Decide what you're gonna do 3 years from now. I had to tell a dairy crowd last week, if you're just clinging on thinking that milk prices are gonna be good forever, we've had too much milk since 1986. What's your long-term plan? When I look at the future, I see a lot more contractual production. When we were little kids, people my age, there was independent egg and poultry producers. Are there any independent egg and poultry producers in the United States right now? Not unless they're on a very small niche category. Poultry went contractual. Tyson, whoever. Pork. Everybody had an independent pork operation until the late 90s when hogs went to 7 cents a pound. What happened? Contractual production, vertical integration. I work for those large vertical integrators where they have 40,000 sows and they have 100 barns with people growing their hogs for them, and you can say, I don't like that it removed the independence. It also removed a great deal of risk, didn't it? That's why we're gonna see this. Will we see it in corn and soybeans? Probably not. These great big large operations can go ahead and do their own risk mitigation just by going out a year or two and selling their stuff. Plus the crop insurance program through the USDA makes it so you're less risky. But on other things, I see this happening in dairy. I see it happening probably even in beef. I see it happening also, you get consistency of product when you have contractual business models. Vertical integration is going to continue. When I look at the future, I see a growth in this because it's already happening. I told you that we have 1/4 of the globe's economy. We are so well off, we will pay for a story in the United States of America. Maybe not the poor person that's living very, very modestly in rural Indiana, but that's not where most people live. Remember, 83% of the population lives in large urban areas, and there's more money in the suburbs than we sometimes realize. Like this, from my wife's magazine 3 years ago, driving down the road. It was an ad in like Better Homes and Garden. Sunshine or sadness? Look at that hen. Does she look happy? They took that picture a minute and a half before a hawk came out of a tree. Killed the hell out of her, but she was happy up until that point. And of course, $6.99 a dozen. I found them at a specialty store. $6.99 a dozen. There's going to be more of this because the consumer has the money to spend on these specialty products that make them feel good. Hemp milk. When my old man was a kid, there was milk. Then when I was a kid, there was skim and 2% milk. Now, there's 9 different things that aren't even milk. Almond milk, soy milk, cashew milk, oat milk, rice milk, which is an insult to the Holstein, by my opinion, and hemp milk. Brilliant product. You drink the fluid, you smoke the carton, no waste. I look at the future, I see adjectives that sell. This industry, again, we've got #2 yellow corn production down to a science, right? Does anybody think that we don't already figure out we're pretty good at making #2 yellow 56 pounds a bushel corn? We're pretty darn good at that, right? So there's going to be more room for heirloom, heritage breed, wholesome, all natural, unhomogenized, organic. I mean, the names go on and on and on. Certified humane, raised by your daughter, blessed by a rabbi, whatever designation. The internet and the foodie movement, 53% of Americans now call themselves foodies, which is defined as a person with a very intense appreciation for food. That's good for us long term. It means we can upsell these people more stuff. I'm giving you this information because a year from now, 5 years from now, we might look into how we can do something that's a value-added product. I don't know what those are. Somebody drank too much hemp milk, left the gate open, and a boar got in with a ewe. And my God, And you think you're confused? What bathroom do they use? We're going to keep having fun with my crowd here. I got about 15 minutes here. We're going to give something free away. He already bought one, but you know what, Mark? You've been and you're wearing that Purdue shirt, which means you can read. I never give books to IU grads. They don't know how to, like roll their joints in them or something, you know what I'm saying? You can have that's a copy of Do Business Better.
Thank you.
Yeah, and farmers love free stuff, right? You're a farmer. Good customer.
I think.
Remember, just do what I do. Make up whatever they want to hear to get the loan, right? You didn't hear me say that. All right, people ask me about this all the time. Damian, is fake meat real? Fake meat's going to have some troubles, and I think it's because the consumer base continues to move against processed food. It had its big rally. Impossible Burger was brought into Burger King, but the consumer base is continually moving against processed food. Stuff in the center store, as grocery people call it. Boxes and cans. Chef Boyardee, Nabisco, Mondelez, Kraft Heinz, Oscar Mayer, all that stuff that comes in a box and a package, the consumer's moving away from it. What is fake meat? It's pretty darn processed food. Pea protein, soy components, coconut oil. I find it interesting that they're using the environmental angle. Hey, it's better for the environment than beef. Coconut's biggest producer is Indonesia. Has anybody checked the environmental record of Indonesia? It's abysmal. And then you put it in a boat and you transport it across the Pacific. You're right, probably better than that steer that was right out there in Tippecanoe County. I believe that this is going to be a product. I believe it's not going to overtake meat, even though the Impossible Burger CEO said it is his objective to completely eliminate animal agriculture by 2035. He's a zealot. It's not going to happen because the consumer is still going to have a backlash against it. And then, of course, lab meat made out of Petri dishes with protein and DNA, no. The same people that reject GMOs are going to really struggle with going with Petri dish protein. This reminds me of stuff that we've seen if you keep up with history and you're an observer. Stuff that was always supposed to be better and healthy. That's a can of Similac, probably like my mother used to feed me, because back in 50 years ago, they thought, hey, why would you breastfeed your kid? Dirty old thing. Let's just go ahead and give it this stuff out of a can. Now what are we? 83%. I just read it yesterday, so I want to make sure I was prepared for you. 83% of new births mothers in the United States right now breastfeed their kids. Similac was supposed to be better for you than the real thing. Egg beaters, 30, 40 years ago, right? Eggs were killing us. We're up to now 280 eggs of consumption per American. We got down to in the low 200s because of the whole issue against eggs killing you. You see, all this stuff comes back around. Fat-free skim milk. You know the only category of milk that's actually growing, the only fluid category of milk that's actually growing? Whole milk. Whole milk. So I believe that this is the issue that those companies and those products are going to face. You've got to break the ice here a little bit. It's getting a little heavy, right? Every time you do this, you get a little heavy. I mean, and plus, a bunch of people, 8 seconds, shouldn't have, you get a little sleepy. I'm going to tell you something about food. I've got this observation about Americans, that they are becoming very, like when you were a kid, there was a finicky kid, wouldn't eat anything, was a pain in the neck. Every American is becoming that kid. I'm gluten intolerant. And the Hollywood crowd is just about driving me bananas. When the Golden Globe Awards said we were going to go all vegan for the good of the environment, so they pulled in their limousine after flying in their helicopter, wearing a wardrobe that will be discarded in the landfill to tell us how to eat. I've had enough of it. Gwyneth Paltrow and her anti-GMO movement. You want to tell these Hollywood people, Hollywood, listen, man, GMOs are not your problem. Heroin is one of your problems. Nobody's died from GMOs, but by God, they kill the heck out of themselves with heroin, all right? Everybody has a food cause, a food problem. I'm gluten intolerant. 0.7% of the United States, less than 1%, 0.7, is actually got celiac disease. Did you know that? Yet 35% of this country pretends that they are gluten intolerant. I spoke to the National Wheat Association here a few years ago, and I said, there's no such thing as gluten intolerance. There's just a thing called evolution. If spaghetti kills you, maybe we don't need your genetics. See, they liked it a lot more than you guys did. Gluten, you know, lactose. It's always something. I can't eat this. Oh, I can't do that. I'm getting tired of this whole thing. Peanuts. I love peanuts. I love eating peanuts with beer. I love it. And you know what? I like peanuts when I fly, but I can't get peanuts on planes right now. You know why? 2% of the population has a peanut allergy. Let me just tell you about this. 2%. No more peanuts on Delta Airlines. No more peanuts when I'm flying across the, because of I can live with 2% less people on Delta Airlines. It would open up space in the overhead, you know? I made that crack a year ago. 1 year ago, I made that crack on stage. And I had a woman that stood in line at my book table to yell at me. I don't appreciate your humor, Mr. Mason. I heard you say that about peanuts. I have a little boy with peanut allergies, and if he ingests peanuts, his larynx will, he might die. I said, well, ma'am, maybe you missed it up front. I told you I've got a comedy background. I was being funny. I don't want your little boy to die. You, on the other hand. I said, why don't you get yourself a handful of peanuts? Frankly, I'm mad because nobody makes exceptions for me. I'm colorblind. Ain't nobody making exceptions for the colorblind. Nobody's like coddling the colorblind. Nobody's making it better for colorblind. You're saying colorblindness can't kill you like peanuts. Really? I'm red-green colorblind. So is 8% of the male population of the United States of America is red-green colorblind. What color did you make the stoplights? Got a guy back here nodding his head. You want to tell him or you want me to tell him? The red and yellow looks the exact same. Yeah, and the white or green, it looks like white does. We don't do well with these things. Let me tell you something else. Some of you little smartasses, color-seeing smartasses as you are, decided that a parking garage shouldn't be numbers. I went to a parking garage with my rental car here a year or two ago, red, orange, green, brown level. Do they all look the same to you? Red, green, orange, brown, it's just a matter of dark and light. There I am stumbling around to try and find my Hertz rent-a-car. You made it so a colorblind guy can't drive, but a person too dumb to count to 4 is on the streets. Ain't easy being colorblind. Let me just tell you something. I go to parties sometimes, not very often because I don't like people, but my wife's with me. Damian, that's a good-looking jacket you got, because my wife picks out all my clothes for me, and she says, why pick out his clothes? Why? He's colorblind. What do they do? And you know what I'm talking about when you go to an event. You're colorblind? What color's this? What color's that? And I would say, do you do this to deaf people? I'll give you a little bit of advice, young mothers. Don't buy 7-Up for the flu. And one other piece of advice. If you have a colorblind child, this is good advice. It'll save that kid's life. If you have a colorblind kid, do not encourage him to become an electrician. I don't touch electricity. My wife and I renovating a place. Hey, you want to help me hang the ceiling fan? I said, you might as well give me the electric chair right now. All right. The future, as I look at the future for our business, I see autonomous machinery. And now I want you to just know, because I know we've got a lot of farm people in here. Farmers love tractors. I just followed Machinery Pete last week at an event, and he spent a bunch of time talking about old John Deere 4020s. Let me just go ahead and tell you the truth. I've got a theory on this. John Deere 4020s are still being manufactured at a secret plant in Iowa. And after they make them, they stick them in a barn for a month and let the birds crap on them and put some dust on them. And then they roll them out, and then you people all pay $80,000 for a vintage 50-year-old John Deere 4020. It was just made last month. But anyway, you farm people love equipment. So let me tell you about equipment. It's going to become autonomous, but it isn't going to look like this. I saw that one at the Ohio Farm Show 3 years ago when it came out, and I said, good God, someone drove that under a bridge. Hope nobody's injured. These look like old, stodgy companies that don't know where the future is going. You know, when your grandparents thought they were being cool, and they did stuff that was still 50 years behind the curve, that's what this looks like to me, because the future of autonomous machinery looks like that. That's a company called DOT out of Saskatchewan. A friend of mine is the CEO of that company. I went to their demo day in March of last year. It's almost like an erector set with a 175 horsepower Cummins engine on it, powered by your phone. That's where this future is going. It does not pull a device, it holds the device. Right now it can take a sprayer, it can take a planter, it can take a grain cart. Is it going to be there tomorrow? No, it's going to be there 5 years from now. Skid loaders changed everything, especially on livestock farms. In the 1960s, we didn't have skid loaders. By the 1980s, we certainly did, right? My brother used to make the joke, we never had a milk surplus until every dairy farm got a skid loader. Made life easier. They're smaller, they're more nimble, you can put a number of attachments on the front of them. For the first time in your life, you're going to see farm machinery get smaller, and it needs to. Right now, you can't go down the county roads with the equipment we have. It couldn't possibly get any bigger. The bridges in my area were built in the 1960s. Were they made for 60,000-pound equipment? No, it's a wonder they don't crumble right now. Equipment's going to keep getting smaller. What's the most valuable asset that everybody in this room has that's a farmer? It's under your feet, right? Soil. I think it's soil, right? Almost everybody's balance sheet probably is heavy on land. When you drive a 30-ton piece of equipment across that land, what's it do to your most valuable asset? It beats it up. It compacts it. We're going to see equipment get smaller because it's more nimble, because it can travel, because it's more easily managed with a computer or a phone, and it also isn't going to beat up your soil. John Deere, AGCO, and Case IH, I think, are going to struggle. Anybody remember one of these phones? Who had a StarTAC in 1999 like I did? Okay. Remember Motorola was going to take over the world. Everyone in the developing countries was going to go to just no landlines. They're going to go straight to a cell phone. Did it happen? Yes. Did it happen with Motorola? No. Because they were the dominant player in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, not the dominant player in the year 2018, 19, and 20, like Samsung and Apple are. That's where the future of the equipment thing goes. When I look at the future, since you're farmers, I see you tilling your soil a lot less. Again, why would you go out there to your land that's worth $6,000 to $10,000 an acre and expose it starting in October and leave it exposed to the elements until May? Got a guy right here that knows what I'm talking about. Soil erosion. You know, if you went to any farmer in this room and said, hey, I'm going to back up a triaxle and I'm going to take 20 triaxles off of this acre, you'd come out with a gun, right? But you'll allow nature to take 20 truckloads of soil off of your acre every year. There's going to be less tillage. There's going to be more cover cropping. Some of this might be required by law based on the environmental records that we have and what's going on with the environmentalism. When I look at the future, I see less chemistry. Sorry, Dan, less synthetic fertilizer. But you know what? We're already using less chemistry. 30 years ago, you popped open a 55-gallon drum of Lasso and just let it dribble out the back of the truck when you're driving around your farm, right? You use that stuff everywhere. We're getting more judicious because it's smart economics, but also it's better for the environment. We're going to have drones and machinery that is lightweight that flies across that field and has an eye that senses where there's an actual weed, and instead of spraying that chemical on all 43,560 feet, it's going to spray it on the actual plants, which only are about 5,000 feet. We're going to use less fertilizer because of the environmental situation. Lake Erie has algae. There's too much nutrient in the waterways. This might be because of regulation. You're saying, all right, before I get into this, I gotta give something else away for free, right? I mean, we gotta keep these people having a good time, right? I gotta be done here in 7 minutes. We got 5 minutes. I gotta be going. You guys having a good time, right? Yeah, that's good. That's good. That was very enthusiastic. I really appreciate that. I know what you're going to tell me. You're going to say, hey, Damian, you're forgetting one thing. We got to feed the world. Agriculture loves feed the world. We came up with that slogan, and I've been hearing it my whole life. Feed the world, feed the world, feed the world. It plays right into our strength, which is massive, massive amounts of commodity production. Guess what? The world's not going to need fed, and it's not going to be incumbent upon us to do it. Sure, we're an export country. Sure, we're going to sell a lot of stuff on the global marketplace, but increasingly less. 20 years ago, the United States produced 2/3 of the world's corn. You know what it was last year? 1/3. China joined the corn party as the #2 corn producer now. India, Australia, Argentina, Brazil, 5 countries that end in stan that I can't even enunciate, right? We're not going to be called upon to be the only place. They learned how to make food also. $15 soybeans and $7 corn made those countries want to learn how to grow food also, and they did. So we're not going to have to worry about feeding the world. And here's the other thing. We've been told our whole lives about the growing population. There's going to be 9 billion. Feed the 9. 10 billion, 11 billion, 12 billion. It's not happening. This book right here, Empty Planet, I just read it last year, brilliant book, well-researched. Population is stagnating fast. The United States of America would be losing population were it not for immigration. It takes 2.1 babies per couple to stay even. There's no such thing as a 0.1. Granted, some babies are littler than others, but it's because of mortality. We're at 1.9. All of Europe is under 2.1. You're telling me about China? Just in Saturday's Wall Street Journal. This is from Saturday's Wall Street Journal. China's birth rate has declined so much, they're going to start losing population when old people start dying. They are not having babies. The world is not going to get to 10 billion people. We're at 7.6 billion right now. Maybe we hit 9. We're going to get old before we get more people. Japan, 130 million people, predicted to be 100 million in just 20 years. We're not going to have a whole bunch more mouths to feed, which is why I continue to preach, let's go out there. And by the way, you're saying, Dave, you got to tell us about China. Tell us about China. Talk about China. You're an ag economist. Talk about China. Okay, I just talked about China. There. So when I see the future of this great industry that you guys are involved in, we're not going to need all these acres. That slopey ground that washes away, that stuff that really shouldn't be farmed, the stuff you probably should put in CRP, you're going to. You know why? Because marginal land's going to revert. All those circles that you fly over western Kansas, if we have enough corn, because the smart people in this industry learn how to make 300 bushels of it in Tipton County, Indiana, why do we need to go out to western Kansas where they get 9 inches of rain? Poke a hole in the ground, use fossil fuels to pump out the Ogallala Aquifer to grow corn. Why don't we just do that in Iowa or in Indiana? Why are we growing stuff on marginal land that erodes? It's going to become trees. I see more acres enrolling in CRP. I see a government that actually understands that is going to increase the CRP acreage because we don't need those acres. It's not about how many bushels anymore because we have enough stuff. I see a future where we grow oddball crops that you never thought about. I thought that was called quinoa. It's called quinoa. People feel smart. Quinoa. Hemp, kale, sorghum. You know, I was raised at the end of Flax Mill Road. There's never been 1 acre of flax in Huntington County since I was a kid. There's never been a flax mill in Huntington County, but there must have been one once because there's a road called Flax Mill Road. What if there's a flax mill again? And it's flax that's organically raised, that's blessed by a rabbi, that's packaged in organic hemp bags for the consumer of tomorrow. You might think I'm kidding. You might think it's all about corn and soybeans, but you know what? If you think I'm crazy, we didn't grow soybeans at any appreciable level until the 1950s. Some of you were born. I know we got some old people in here. I said, Dennis, I know we got some old people in here. Looking at this crowd, some of them is probably going to be their last summit with First Farmers Bank and Trust. Can you remember when soybeans were not everywhere? Of course, because we didn't really grow soybeans until the 1950s. Let me give you another example of a crop that you'd have thought I was crazy if I told you in 1970s you're going to see a whole bunch of this, canola. Anybody know about canola story? North Dakota grows the most of it. 87% of the United States canola comes from North Dakota. The prairie provinces, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta, that's where it's grown in Canada. Canola was invented by 2 professors at a Canadian university. It used to be called rapeseed. They took rapeseed, they lowered its acid content, and they invented an oil seed that can grow in colder weather. It's an amazing product. It's made a lot of money for those provinces. You tell me that I'm crazy when I predict that we're going to grow stuff like Kernza, which is a perennial wheat right now being pioneered by General Mills, the cereal company. Better for the environment, doesn't need tillage, better for water utilization. That's where we're going. You see, by the way, canola, they came up with this product. And they said, we can't sell a product called rape. So it got its name canola, Canadian oil, low acid. Now you learned something today. I believe the future is going to be more diverse. And you will do yourself well to research these opportunities. Because again, we've got corn and soybean production pretty well down. You think I'm kidding? Another article in the Wall Street Journal. Less wheat acres in the United States than there has been in 111 years of record keeping. All right, I wrote a book called Food Fear. It's back on that table. I wrote a book called Do Business Better. This book right here is all about the business of food and agriculture. The other one's all about running your business. You came to this meeting to improve your business, which would be helpful. You came to this meeting also because you're in the business of food and agriculture. You can come and see me right back there. You can get a copy of each of those books. Also, I'll give you something free. As Tade knows, I always give stickers away to my audience members because it's a fun little thing. It's a cool little giveaway. Agriculture. Because starvation sucks. I've been a pro-agriculture guy my whole entire life. I always give these stickers out. I printed that 10 years ago because people were getting too complex. You gotta tell people and the consumers about the science. They don't understand science. According to the National Sciences Foundation, 26% of Americans don't know Earth revolves around the sun. Did you hear what I said? You're gonna tell them about GMOs based on science? 1/4 of us don't know Earth revolves around the sun. I'm from Huntington. We're not a well-educated people. We didn't have a little plastic model. You remember those when you were a kid? Some of the fancy places had a planetarium, but in the grade schools, they had a plastic model. You turned a crank. Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, Neptune, Uranus, Pluto. We didn't have one of those little models, but at Northwest Elementary School, we learned how the solar system works. You know how? We took a fat kid in a yellow shirt and said, stand in the middle of the room. You're the sun. Now you, little boy in the blue shirt, walk around him. You in the white shirt, you walk around the blue shirt. All right, my second sticker, my wife told me 5 years, says, Damian, get yourself a new sticker. Get yourself a new sticker because these people like your stickers. So I came up with this one. If you eat it, drink it, or smoke it, agriculture produced it. Very simple, to the point. Lori says, are they gonna sell? I said, I don't know, I give them away anyhow. She said, are people gonna think they're funny? I said, I don't know. First gig I did, Colorado, right after they legalized marijuana. These things flew off the table like Twinkies, ladies and gentlemen. Follow me, keep up with me. I'll see you back there. Thanks for making me the closer to your Ag Summit. Thanks, Dave.